I was really impressed, Jeremy, that you're not wearing a tie, because I was slightly worried coming in.
I'd be interested to know what your first impressions were when you came to Radley.
I remember thinking, oh, it's great, because although it's a campus, it's still got its a feeling of closeness, not too spread out. So space and yet cohesion and, togetherness. Boys we met, they were, easy to talk to, very relaxed, and clearly loved the school. And I think as a parent, that's what you want to see when you walk around.
I happen fortuitously to be an old Radleyan, so it brought back memories. And I think if I can digress slightly to the point that I love my time at Radley, and it worked for me. So my first impressions of Radley were, it was great, but wow, it's so much different now, in the sense that all the structure is the same. I felt rather like a bad analogy, perhaps, a prodigal son. I'd gone out into the wilderness and I came back and I was welcomed back, not me as such, but we as a family were welcomed. The boy that took us around is amazing. He's just leaving soon, but he walked us around. We had in-depth chats with two particular dons. I was able to question them about things that I thought, had they changed, hadn't they changed, and the buildings and the options. It was great, but so much greater. It was a knee-jerk reaction, care of some Radley friends, to put the boys down, but our life changed in different ways. We had good lives, but then Radley moved completely out of the sphere that we lived in. The possibility wasn't there. One of the boys then pointed out that he wanted that, pointing at the choir, the crocodile crossing the quad. And we as loving parents said, fine, go for it, try. And he did, and amazingly, well, I shouldn't say that in case he watches this, but he got in. And that changed our life, because we came back to the state system, and it's a very good state system in Oxford, great schools. And that was where we thought we were until this moment in life that changed everything. It was good, but it is now something that I had never expected. And therefore it became an aim, it became a goal. But it was still out of our reach as such.
Going around Radley gave him that, I want to go there. I mean, I can remember him. I remember talking to him about the different options and saying, you can get to Radley if you really go for it. And he really went for it. And I think that was a lovely, brilliant thing, that going around the school, meeting the boys, seeing where he might live in which social and that kind of thing, just inspired him, age sort of 12, 13, to, put his foot down and say, this is where I want to be. And I think all credit to the school for getting them to feel like that before they've even, started as a pupil there.
It's nice, actually. I don't particularly want there to be a sense of automatic. So it's A, looking at other schools, and B, perhaps the son of an old Radleyan, not necessarily for that to be an automatic, I want to go to Radley. We want boys to come here because it's the right school for them.
I was very nervous when we came along, because I didn't still quite know how we were going to do it. But when we were taken on by admissions and shown through and taken from one don to the other, it wasn't as, they didn't have a place. They were just coming to have a look. But the way it was done was so civilized, so elegant, that in a way it was a bit like going for a very nice walk with some friends. And that I liked, because we didn't know that the boys would go, if the fortune hadn't shone on them the way it has, they wouldn't have gone to Radley, or they wouldn't be at Radley.
It's a real challenge, that, actually, particularly for families that are worried about the sort of financial implications of coming to a school like Radley, because you sort of, getting the balance right isn't easy, because you want to welcome them and make them feel it's possible that they can come. Equally, you don't want to raise expectations too much, because it's not always going to be possible. Obviously, by definition, there's limited funding available. We can't always do everything that we want to. But I guess even in the last few years, it's become easier to talk about it. And that's partly, I think, because of the success of the foundation, and partly just simply partly because of school strategy, etc. We've got more availability of funds. So it isn't just a few people on the edge now that we might be able to help. It's actually a significant number, and that makes it easier to talk about.
Initially, yes, we were nervous because it was new territory and we didn't know, but very quickly, within months, certainly that year, no, I discuss it when the question comes up. It doesn't come up naturally, but if someone brings it up, we discuss it because it's very important.
Bursaries are really important, and I think people now do talk about it more. I mean, we're involved in other schools and there is more chat. There's definitely more discussion around it. And I think this is a wonderful thing that you're doing here. I think this is really great and inspired. And I think it's great Jeremy's, happy to do it. I just think it's really good, and I would hope it would encourage more people to do it and more people to give, and more importantly, more people to think, actually, I could have a go at sending my son to that school.
Are boys self-conscious about being recipients of funded places? Is that something they worry about? And perhaps sons of donors might not know that their parents are donors, I guess. But again, are they welcoming of boys? How do they think about boys that are here on funded places? Because that's obviously a sensitive topic for the boys themselves.
Definitely. I mean, we have the conversation. Are you, as one does around the table, we talk about bursary places because it's something I'm involved with elsewhere and things. And, do you know who are, and it's like, well, sometimes, but it just doesn't really, I don't think it features as a thing, it's just not a thing. It's like, we're all in our social doing our, whatever we're doing. And it's not a badge or a label or.
They're fine with it. They understand it. They know that they are helped from anonymous kindness elsewhere, and actually, I think that they clock it, and they know that they are accepted into a school which needs the children to be the best they can, and that is one of the conversations we have. Is are you doing what is asked of you? Because I'm not the one that's entirely sponsoring this. And so that is a conversation we have, I would say, many times a year.
So it's just trying to get that balance right. You don't want them to be any different. I'd expect the same expectations of a donor's son as the recipient's son. I mean, the standards and expectations are the same. I mean, it's always been an important part of what Radley stood for, and right back to the foundation when William Sewell sort of had as a vision that 1 in 10 places would be free. So it's sort of in the DNA of the place. If a boy sat in the sofa behind me for an interview, and we think they'll be brilliant for Radley, and Radley will be brilliant for them, then we want money not to get in the way where that's possible.
I personally love the mix of different cultures, different countries, different walks of life. Many of the families, years or few months, years before that they applied, wouldn't have not known about Radley. And that can only be good, in my opinion, for Radley. But that can only help the discussions and the way that the Radleyans grow up, think and appreciate possibly the world is out there that is waiting for them.
The reason we do it is because we both firmly believe we're very lucky people to be able to send our children to private schools. But to Jeremy's point, our children are going to be far better off and more rounded for meeting people from all walks of life and however they happen to be at that school. And I think that's really important, and there's a huge attraction, certainly was an attraction for me as a mother of my boy, and what school he came to. I mean, I originally got in touch with Radley through the foundation anyway, before I even was sort of thinking about it as necessarily as a parent. And I've always been hugely impressed by that. And that was definitely a factor in deciding to send our son there, because we knew that it was a big part of what the foundation and indeed the school was about.
Encouraging this diversity, for me at least, brings it, over the 5-year period, brings a unity.
sometimes it's hard to have the conversation with other people, friends I know who might donate money, and they're like, why would you give it to a privileged school like Radley? And I have that a lot with my old school as well. And I think, well, number one, the foundation is a very professionally run, credible, setup. Number two, more importantly, in a way for me, is that you are giving children, boys in this case, a chance to go to a school that they wouldn't otherwise be able to go, and have an opportunity to then become something else in their life. I mean, I was a teacher at one point in my life, and I know that education is the most important part of your life. It's going to set you up or not for the rest of your life. And I do love the fact that it involves lots of the old boys. I think that's really important, because I think, to really have a foundation that sits well, it needs to kind of go right to the roots. It's not just all current parents, and I feel very strongly about that. I think it needs to be the whole community.
The great thing about the modern world we live in, one of the good things about the web and the internet and social media is that we've all realized, actually, if you think about it positively, how quickly we can help people, whether it's communicating to them or in just giving or giving little bits here and there, suddenly build up and make a huge difference. In my youth, I didn't really get my head round, but when I see how much people can do in little ways, and I think Radleyans are always really good at that. I enjoyed Radley. I left and moved out to a world where there weren't many Radleyans. But what has happened through the years is they've always been there for me and for others. The reason I'm so focused on the fact, so proud of the fact that they happen to be there, is because the future is quite bright with Radley. It isn't, I don't think, treated as something cocky. Oh, I went there. It's something that I'm glad I'm part of, and I'm glad the children are. And I believe that going forward, I like to think they already seem to understand that they are fortunate, and they can work together as a team, and they can add this fortune to other people's lives. Radley, I am already sure, will be a vital cornerstone in their education, not just scholastically, but morally, and with a sense of what you can do with life, and how you might get the best out of life, not just for yourself, but for other people as well.
Radley, I think, will just be, as Jeremy rightly says, I would hope a cornerstone of our son's life going forward. I'm sure it will, because as I mentioned before, I think the Radley community is amazing and very good and strong. He's been shown the opportunities that are available to you in a way that he had no sense when he arrived, and suddenly exploring things that, oh my goodness, I could do this, which I think is wonderful, and I hope he will take away with him to the rest of his life. And I think also learning about other people in life who can be mentors and people you can talk to. I think this is so important.
Yeah, I mean, I love the word cornerstone, which you've both used, which is, I mean, it's not the whole, because life will go beyond Radley, but it's sort of measured from a foundational point of view, measured by that cornerstone. And that's a great image, actually.
I mean, the word rounded is sometimes a little dull, but you know what? A rounded person in this day and age is a gem. And I think that is what Radley produces.
Well, if nothing else, these conversations make me feel good about the school I work at. So it sort of lifts me up.
Is that why we're doing them, John?